And we are going. What's going on with everybody? It is your boy, Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Orange Dungeon, giving it to you real raw rugged. And I got somebody on the other line. I'm letting him introduce himself, man. Who do we have here today?
Terrence, what's up?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. It's a rainy Wednesday in Baltimore.
It is pouring down.
Yeah, it's coming down. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm excited for this though, man. I am super duper excited for this. I've been trying to do this interview. I've been trying to get this interview with you for I don't know how long. When was season one of Random Acts of Flightness?
2018.
20 maybe 19. I'll say maybe 2019. I've been trying to get the interview done. So the fact that we finally got this, I appreciate this, man. Because
And
I look at you as somebody who's like, you're gonna be like, you already are becoming that, but like officially is one of like the staples. I feel like one of the most important directors, kind of this generation. You know, that's how I look at you. Like somebody who, 20 years from now, people are gonna be like, you had this person, you had this person, you also had Terence Nance. You know what I'm saying? That's how, in my eyes, people are supposed to be looking at you 20 years from now. I feel like you're getting to that point, and when you're at that point, it's going to make my heart happy because your art is something that I've never seen before. It's something that blew my mind, and I just want to say thank you before we even get to this for creating what you do create because people like me absolutely do love it, man.
thank you, man. That warms my heart. Thank you for watching. Thank you for saying that.
Of course. And to show you that I'm not playing, I want to tell you how I discovered your show because it's the funniest story in my opinion because I went into watching this show ready to hate. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. This is the most
Good.
insane story. So I'm doing my friend's podcast, right? And I don't remember what or why Random Acts of Flyness came up. But I was like, what's that? And he was like, some show. And I guess he had a blog back in 29 or back in the 2000s called Random Acts of Flyness. And he was like, I think that nigga stole the name. And I was like, really? I'm like, man, I'm finna watch this bullshit, man. What is this random acts of this nigga flying around? What this nigga doing? So I'm ready to go in and hate. So I think I left the podcast and say, hey, I'm gonna go home early and get my hating in. I need to get some hate in today. So I went home, went on demand, searched Random Acts of Flyness, episode one. I watched episode one. I watched episode two. I think I watched episode three. And I called him and I said, hey, he ain't steal this, bro. I said, hey, bro, this nigga ain't steal this, dog. I was like, hey, man, I love you, Amp. I love you. This might be the greatest shit I ever seen in my life, bro. I was like, this nigga did not steal this. And when I tell you, I have watched every single thing you put out since then, supported everything, the videos you done directed. I am a Terrence Nance fan. So with all that said, thank you once again, man. You're the man. You are the man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That's a hilarious story. And, I definitely have sat down for a hate watch, occasionally to see what's gonna happen. But yeah, that's an amazing way to see it.
Has that ever happened? Have you ever went in for a hate watch and you end up liking what you liked, or end up liking what you intended to hate, or is it always like a hate watch?
Uh, nah, nah. I mean, nowadays I think it's hard to come at something without knowing a lot about it.
Yeah.
Like not the trailer tells you everything, but I don't think I've ever gone in with like I know this is about to be whatever my version of terrible is. It
I'm
usually is. It usually is.
See, I'm big on now. I like to go in with no type of insight. So going there and watching Random Acts of Fighters, I just went in knowing that one thing that he told me. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna hate this show. I had no clue what it was about. And nigga, when I watched the first three episodes, I'm like, who made this show? So whenever this time was, I don't remember if it's 2018, 2019, but this is the only thing I know about you by this point. I see that you're supposed to be making Space Jam. In my mind, I'm like, nigga, is Bugs Bunny finna be crossing a nigga up with a kufi on? Like, bro, this is like, what is. Nigga, is Tweety Bird finna be dunking with a dashiki? Like, bro, it blew my mind. I'm like, bro, this nigga finna have, it's finna be communism versus capitalism on Looney. I'm like, bro, this finna be crazy, bro. So at this point, I'm like, this nigga might be the greatest nigga to ever live if he do this. So yeah, I don't know, like when people watching the show for the first time, what do you hear their reaction is watching Random Acts of Flatness?
The reaction, especially the season one, that was most consistent was, how did you get this on TV? Like, how was this allowed? You know, and you know, that was my reaction too. You know, there was definitely moments in making it that I was like, they definitely not gonna put this on TV. You know what I mean? Like, they're not gonna sign off. You know, um, and you know that's a it hasn't happened again. So I think that there's also that. You know what I mean? Like, definitely felt anomalous. You know, and that's not like a good thing. That's, you know, that's a bad thing for sure. Um, but yeah, that's the reaction. You know, that it felt, you know, like it was crossing what is usually allowed, especially in terms of just, you know, how black people can say how we really feel, what's really going on. You know,
That's what I thought. I thought like, how in the world did a bunch of white people say, you know what, let's do a viewing of this and see if this is going to be on TV. I was like, how did they watch this and be like, you know what, we're going to air this on TV? That did not feel like something that was supposed to be on TV when I'm watching this. So I'm like, this is insane. And then you come out swinging first episode just with like the guest appearances, just like this thing got John Hamm in the show. Like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, it's just so much happening, and I kind of want to start at the, how do I put this? So I told you before we got on here, I interviewed your brother. So for doing research in that, even between that, before I even interviewed him, I just want to see those you had going on. I started watching things you did beforehand. So like, I know you guys worked on Swimming in Your Skin Again, Oversimplified. What else you guys had? A bunch of other things. Just watching it, and I would be correct in assuming that Random Acts of Flyness is the biggest budget you ever had, right?
yeah, to that point,
To
definitely.
that point. So with that budget, when you get the show clear, like okay, we're just 100% going to be on air, and you writing and creating things, you coming from a point where you're like, okay, I have to make these movies in the past with a limited budget, but now you have a big budget with stars in it, and you can do more animations and all type of crazy stuff. What is your initial reaction to like, man, what am I gonna do with this budget? Because you probably used to working with a limited budget, now you have a much more bigger budget. So what? How did you go about dealing with a bigger budget versus in the past?
Well, one, I would say that it wasn't that much bigger where that question even came to mind. It was still no money. You know what I'm saying? It was still like it was like going from 0 to 35 cents, as opposed to going from 0 to like $100 to $200. You know, so, you know, up until that point, everything I made was just, you know, on the love. You know, like just trying to get. And everybody I was working with was working for free mostly, or, you know, essentially free. So it was really just people getting paid at a minimal level, not even a fair amount to do what they do. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And specifically with the pilot of Random Acts, I want to say like maybe 65% of it preceded Random Acts. You know, it existed before. So we had, yeah, obviously Swimming in Your Skid Again. There's like a piece of what we had shot there in Random Acts in the first episode. Everybody Dies, which is a film um, by Latama Badomo, which is also preceded the first episode. But, you know, all of us in that writers' room, writers and directors, you know, we have pre-existing work and relationships, and that that helped a lot, you know, essentially, because if you were able to like say, okay, break down just the pilot, for instance, and say this is how much it costs, it would be very expensive if people were paid to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not how the industry works. So I think that maybe more, you know, like obviously the pilot goes in, it gets greenlit, a whole host of stuff has to happen, and then we go to make the show. And yeah, you know, like we had to manage the money we were given, but um, the nature of what the show is. You got to create a bunch of worlds that you know are fully realized, and I think that's just immediately a, the difficult thing to do, money wise, with movies. We have to create a bunch of different worlds, and that's the nature of the show. You know what I mean? And so, I could safely say we were the smallest budget HBO show. You know, there was like not just a person behind a desk with a suit on or something like that. There was like having to create worlds. We were definitely the smallest budget ever. So it didn't feel that way. But what in 2020 hindsight, I think the great thing it gives you, just having any money at all in that moment, in my kind of journey, was it just gave the ability to pay my friends and my collaborators to be in the same space at the same time, which is not a given. You know what I mean? And really, not like it's all about the band. Like anything, any great art that happens, anything that happens at all, is happening from a collective band environment. You know what I mean? And it's just like for that little bit of time, the gift of it was just the resources created a little bit of time, space and time, to all be together. Really.
Like you said, it didn't feel. It felt like you had like a big budget to make the show. So the fact that you're like, nah, it was a pretty small budget compared to other shows. It didn't feel like it. So you did a great job making it feel much more grandiose than probably what it actually was behind the scenes. You did a really phenomenal job with that. Even like I said, with the animations in the show, like the first season, that's the one with the broccoli in the that's the first season. Like that's genius. You know what I'm saying? Like I love that. And yeah, so okay, so going back from the beginning, you getting this budget and you making this show, are you creating skits and episodes? Are you ever trying to not dumb it down, but thinking like, I don't know if I could put this on TV, so I might swap it out with this. Does that ever go in your head, even before you present it to HBO, or just like having that idea? Do you ever kill ideas thinking that this won't ever get passed?
Nah, nah. I think it would probably make some of the producers' job a lot easier if I did do that, because maybe there would be some foresight, exercising some level of foresight. It's just definitely not my skill set as it relates to dealing with the people funding or distributing the thing. Um, but yeah, that's again, it's a function of team. I had a team of producers who did that translation. You know what I mean? And mostly it worked. Mostly they were very successful, at translating it. So I never really had to, and not only me, like the rest of us never really had to do that. I mean, obviously there was things that got rejected on those grounds. Like we put, like in the first season, there was a whole thread of like this gang called the Cult of Keck who had kidnapped Bill Maher on air. And like we were like we were like, no guys, it'll be inexpensive. Bill Maher, like we can get him to do it, and he's on HBO, and we can just use it. It was just like we were like, they're gonna do it. This is so easy, but they wouldn't let us kidnap him on air. In 2020, I mean, obviously, it was explained to me by Tamir, our producer, why like they're never gonna say yes to that, and he was right, and yeah, but so that did happen definitely more than once. But I would say the show, the feeling of the show is the feeling of more often than not than being like, okay, like what like all right, like whatever that is, you know, go ahead, And part of that was because it was very affordable, like
Yeah.
it was not wasn't breaking the bank on nothing.
So I guess even before that, how did you even get this show pitched to HBO?
So the show initially came from a prompt. Um, I would say around many years ago, like early 2000s. I kind of don't remember what happened first, the conversation between Nelson and I, or the prompt, but Nelson and I had a conversation, and he said, this is when TV One had just come out.
Yeah.
And, TV One at that time was just like Different World reruns and Sanford and Son
Yeah.
reruns, and and also Adult Swim was just starting to get going. And he was like, big Adult Swim fan. He was like, we should ask TV1 if they could let us take over the midnight, and we could just make stuff and put on air, like on TV1 every night. And that's you have to, I think Nelson, he's probably in college at the time, so I was probably just almost in college. You know what I mean? So it was like we had nobody to call, no relationship. There was no way that was like gonna. But it was just like kids dreaming, whatever. And that was like my first concept of what it would be. And then around that time, I had a job doing the music for this BT show. Um, it was called Africanus, or it was basically a short film showcase, and I did like the theme music. And the guy who produced that, his name was Ralph Scott, really great guy, um, in the independent film world, the black independent film world. And he programmed some of my shorts and stuff like that on the show. And he was like, "You want to pitch a show?" And I was like, "Okay." It's a show. It's called Random, and it was essentially the show that you see, but it was a little bit more organized around themes. And we never really, I never personally pitched it, but apparently, this is. I was never in a room where it got pitched, but he told me, it didn't work out right. But the good thing about it was that I had the idea, like I'd written it down, it was in my head.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a few years, Tamir Muhammad, amazing producer, EP on Random Acts. He had a program, long story short, that he was doing where he was incubating projects for a lot of different studios and channels, in the Time Warner ecosystem. And he asked me if I'd be interested in like developing a news show, and I was like, no, I don't think no, but I have this thing, it's called Random, Random Acts of Flyness at the time. By that time, I had the idea for the title. Boom, boom, boom. This is what it is, right? And he was the one who really took it around and pitched it. And by that time, obviously, I had made some like little clips of different stories, different things that kind of fit into that world. And he really masterfully communicated it in a way that made it seem like something really viable, for television at the time, especially based in what was going on at the time. At the time, this is like pre-streamers, really. This is like Netflix existed, but it wasn't like.
Around like what year is this?
This is like I want to say like 2014,
Gotcha.
2014, 15, something like that. And before, like, HBO was just a channel.
Yeah.
And it was the channel that meant like prestige, artful television.
Yeah.
And it was the only one really that meant that. You know what I mean? And now there are no channels really. It doesn't really exist to have like a channel. It's more just a platform. And so within that context, it was like, if you're watching a smart-ish fake news show, and then you watch a smart kind of dramedy, then gets late, and then this comes on. It kind of was like something that you could see happen in a channel situation. And so he was able to translate it, and ultimately, I he also had this incubator where we could make little examples of it. So I didn't really ever explain it to anybody. I just was like, this is it, and we just played a little clip. So it was very simple.
No, and like I said, it came out beautifully, and it's so much to unpack that I won't be able to do all of it. And before I even do that, I do want to ask: is everything in the show, does it mean something? Are some things abstract? Are certain things up for interpretation? Or when you're when you're co-creating with people, is there, hey, this means something specific? Because there's certain things that I watch that on the show where I may watch it one time and I'm like, okay, I came away with that. Then the next time I came away with something else. Are there certain things that are intended for that? Or are there certain things that are just like, this means one thing. This ain't supposed to mean multiple meaning things. Is everything like that, or are there certain things that are up for interpretation?
You know, it's a both and, like in the flow of making cinema, to me I look at it as, you're using the language of cinema, you know, which has all these sort of disciplines within it, whether it's the photography, the costumes, the performances, the sound, like it has all these like elements or these tones that make up the word that the sentences, that you're watching. Um, and I think that for me, it's always really important to get clear on what is the intention behind, you know, all the decisions that I'm making in the show, you know. And I think that's, you hold that dear. You have to hold that dear, because if you don't know that, then it gets really easy. If I don't know what I want to say, it gets really easy to, kind of collapse into self doubt, um, or any other energy that is not going to, generate finishing work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or saying what needs to be said. And I think, with cinema, especially with season two, a lot of it was like, what is the prayer? What do I need to say to myself in this moment? And what I need to say to myself was, these different prayers of the episodes. What's the meaning of my name? That's the first episode. So what's the meaning of your name? You know, what does that mean about what your life should be? What the prayer for your life should be? Um, and obviously, like by the sixth episode, it's a prayer to release greed, to trust the abundance of the universe. So you got to know that when you're making the episode, that the prayer is to release greed, so that when you're doing the costumes, that's going to inform. When you're working with Charlize, it's like, this is what we're doing with the costumes. The prayer is clear, so you can orient around it. And I think that that's what creates this sort of multiplicity of readings and meanings, because it's a symbolic language, so you're deploying symbols, and symbols are, they're like ingredients in food. When I taste cilantro, it'll taste different than when you taste cilantro. When I taste pepper mixed with saffron, it's going to taste different than when you taste it, because when I taste it, it's going to bring me to this other place that's related to the first time I smelled it when I was on this trip to Indonesia or something. And for you, it's going to take you somewhere else. They're all generative places, but it's the same meal. We get, literally the same thing. And so cinema works the same way. Is if it's working, if the prayer is clear, it's going to take each person's spirit and their consciousness to all kinds of different places. Reflection, hopefully. You know what I mean? And I think that is what, we call an experience of something having multiple readings, or having what I wanted to have is a divinatory quality, because for me, that's the use of stories in Black culture, right? Like, it's a fable, and a fable's divinatory use, you know, is really about the consistency of the fable. The example I use is like, if you tell a 5-year-old the story of the tortoise and the hare, they're gonna be like, "Oh, I shouldn't really run super fast to go get the ice cream because I might fall and skin my knee or whatever." But you used to tell that same kid the story of the tortoise and the hare when they're 50 years old, they're gonna have some existential thing around, you know what I mean, like moving fast to their goals, like, you know what I mean. But it's the same story, right? So like, you gotta like find a way to, a fable is open enough to craft a fable is open enough to have these like multiple meanings for different moments in people's lives. You know what I mean? So I think that's how I look at it.
No, and like you said, talking about eating the food, where if you ate it, take you one place, I eat it, it take me another place. There's so many things where it's like, I have so many personalized experiences when I watch the show, where it's like, I watch, for example, I think it's season one, isn't it? It's like a segment where, um, it's like a clip where they're interviewing like Fred Hampton's like wife, right? And that took me back to like, just I met like some Black Panthers, and I had like a long conversation with them about like just Fred Hampton, Black Panthers, blah 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 blah, and it's just, I don't know, like it's so much that, because chicken is just chicken. Chicken is going, even if you got an experience with chicken, it's going to take you back to like one place, maybe two places. you got chicken, you got some corn, you got everything in this show, and that's what I feel like makes it interesting because it truly is random. It can go from you being at the crib one episode to some vegetables, you know what I'm saying, taking steroids or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all it is so insane, you know? It is so crazy. And one thing that I want to know if I interpreted it right or if this was done on purpose. There's a lot of talk in season 1 about like let's stop talking about like whiteness, more about blackness. I feel like season 2 talked almost strictly just like about blackness, where season 1 touched more on whiteness than season 2 did. Did I did I interpret that right? Was that conscious?
I would agree with that analysis.
Why was that a decision?
Um, I don't think that was like a conscious recalibration. I think it's just the result of living, and I'm an antenna for what's going on. Really, not in the whole world, but just directly around me. You know, um, and in season 1, what was going on in the world, is in the wake of the Freddie Gray murder and Mike Brown and the uprisings and reaction and uh, the report of the infiltration of you know the the police departments in and around Ferguson and St. Louis by the KKK, and just the level of infiltration the KKK has in police departments. So there was a real, um, just in our vibe, like in our conversation, the extent to which you know we reacted to that. You know what I mean? Um, and talking about it amongst all the other stuff we talk about, and obviously genocide, right? White supremacy is a very militarized situation then and now. It was in the news
Yeah.
a lot then those days, and whatever theater of warfare it is, whether it's here, it's, Palestine or wherever, it just is that, right? And so when something's up, we talk about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think that a lot of things happened between season 1 and season 2 for me personally. Obviously, I went through the whole Space Jam experience and COVID, just as broad strokes of things that happened. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And just more internal experiences, more family experiences, obviously, and just I think that's a general effect of lockdown of like you sitting there dealing with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like ultimately for 2 years. That and everybody who was writing the show was like having that experience. So I think that maybe what you're kind of naming, but a focus on blackness is just us focus on ourselves. We are black, just necessarily, um, you know, because of that, what was going on in that moment. If we were to do a season right now, who knows? Who knows what it would antenna through? But maybe there would be that sort of refocusing. But also, I do think in season 1 there was. I mean, the pilot episode was about what it's like for all of your energy as a black person to be subsumed in the fight against whiteness and the energy it takes to like course correct from that, you know, frontier of warfare towards another frontier.
Yeah.
And that's how the episode is structured. It happens in the middle of the episode. You're like, oh, I'm trying to think about why am I thinking about the police right now? You say like, let me think about sex. Saying like, let me think, like that's like another. So I think that transition you're talking about for me, when it was most conscious, it was in the context of making season 1 as a whole.
It's interesting you brought up about kind of just like it's funny. It sounded like it's like what Kendrick said in Euphoria, where he was like, "I'm just what the culture feeling," and you just kind of like you just what's around you. You just react to what's around your environment essentially, and just saying like how it was in the news at the time about like black people getting killed or whatever. And it's so funny. It's like really like the news is kind of like Sports Center. It's like, oh, Kyrie got some good games going on. Oh, we're gonna talk about Kyrie a lot. But Kyrie not having no good games, all right, we're not going to talk about Kyrie. So it's like black people getting shot. It's like, all right, this is what everybody's talking about. Let's talk about it. Well, nobody's talking about it anymore. Well, I guess it doesn't exist, so we're not going to talk about it. But it's like, it's still going on. Kyrie's still playing games. You know what I'm saying? He might not be dropping 50, but he's still playing. So
Right.
it's super interesting that, like, because there was somebody who got killed by the police in my city a couple days ago, and not
Hmm.
on national news because it's not the trendy thing to talk about right now. So it is interesting how, like, you know deaths, definitely black deaths, can be like trendy. It's really weird, and it's like when it's out of trend, it's out of trend. Ain't nobody talking about it no more. It's still going on, but ain't nobody talking about it. That's weird.
Well, there's got to be some sort of like mass media science anthropology that kind of addresses that right now, because we're in a moment of mass media that's very different than the moment of mass media even in 2020 or even in 2015, in the sense that like where we get our media is different. Like in 2020 we did get it all from our phones and our scrolls, but we were all inside, and there was no other thing to distract us from the George Floyd video. In
Mm.
2015, there was still kind of a moment where the phone hadn't totally taken over entirely. You know what I mean? But it was starting to, and also there was kind of like that was almost the first wave that started with Trayvon. That like it was about, like you were talking about, this media momentum. You know, from to Mike Brown. And I think right now, to your point about like, if you think about the media as a colonial, white supremacist, genocidal system of information sharing to propagate how humans should behave in order to succeed monetarily and socially in Eurocentric white society, right? If that's its function, to show you how you should comport yourself, then, it's a system that can be like a body. You can get sick or get a virus, right? And the George Floyd video is a virus that like made it sort of eat itself, made it critique itself even. You know what I mean? And what happens if you get a virus, if it doesn't kill you? You know what I mean? You become inoculated.
All right, we are back. Hey man, them people tried to cut my boy off. You know what I'm saying? My boy was talking that talk, man. You know what I'm saying? Them people tried to cut him off. So you was talking about the body being Hey, by the way, you using a lot of big words. That boy said inoculated. You know, so I think he said the body was getting inoculated, and it cut you off. So that's what you were talking about, the viruses, and
That might not be the right word, but I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Like the vaccine effect of like, if you think of the media, as a system, that has its own sense of homeostasis and, survival, especially the media of the American media system, right? That the George Floyd video and many of videos of like that, to your point, you know, can be said to be a virus in a certain way, right? Um, and then it'll absorb that video and show it because people will then watch CNN, which is what they want. But then immediately, they are infected with state violence, white supremacist violence as something in the state itself as a purveyor of violence is something that needs to go. We need to get saying like this got to stop. So you get people in the streets saying fuck CNN and fuck the whole state itself, which is what you know necessitates the media body, right? And so it's like the George Floyd video is the virus, right? And because it didn't kill the media or the state, you know, then now the media knows how to absorb a video of a black person being murdered without a quote unquote murder effect happening or without large scale protests coming out of it, right? And this doesn't have to be like a conscious process propagated by like specific people intentionally, even though it is too, probably, but it doesn't even have to be. It could just be the nature of this, you know, a colonial government system and the media that sustaining itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that virus, we know, the police killing a black person video virus, we know how to deal with that. We know how to like absorb it, without it making us sick at all. You know what I mean? So I think that's partly the reason for what you described as, a total indifference, ignorance to sweeping under the rug of any, state sponsored killing in terms of, black people in America being killed by the police. But, because life gonna stay life, another thing is happening, which is the video of the Palestinian child, being murdered, which is having a different viral, viral. I don't use it, yet it's a double entendre in that sense, but a different viral effect on the state apparatus, the state media apparatus. You know what I mean? It'll have a different viral effect on the election this year. You know what I mean? And we don't know how it's going to play out. Maybe safe to say it won't entirely destroy the whole system, quote unquote, destroy. But it's another thing that's making it sick, and it will create some sort of mutation. You know what I mean?
I've excuse me. I've said this on here before, but just to have like kind of my 2 cents on what you're saying, because I agree with everything, and I think sometimes it's as simple as just people don't really care until they're being told to care about something. I always use the example of sports for it. Like I like basketball, so when basketball's going on, I'm watching it when it's on. Playoffs, I'm watching it. Off season, I'm seeing who get traded, who get cut, who got drafted. And when the season starts, I'm still watching. I know the history of basketball. I know, the greats and all that. If people really care about black people, they won't only watch it when it's on TV, or they won't only know about what's going on when it's only on TV. They would know about the things that's going around in their community, the things that don't make the news. They would know the history of black people, and they would have actual knowledge of it. Just like if you like a sport, you have knowledge and great knowledge of that sport. A lot of people don't really have knowledge of why black people are even in the state that they're in. Granted, you do have to do a lot of outside research because you're probably not going to learn that in school. But that's what you do when you really care about something. You really do the extra research. Oh, I like the city girls. I'm gonna find out where the city girls from. Let's find out. You learn the knowledge. You do the knowledge like the 5%ers say. They ain't doing the knowledge on black people, man. I don't know if you agree with that, but I just sometimes feel like people don't honestly care until they're told to care.
But do you think that's something that should exist, or and who do you mean by people that in terms of those who don't care about black people?
I mean everybody, including black people. Sometimes, like of course, there's people like you, there's people like me who I think care about black people, but there are a lot of black people who I know who they don't, bro. They didn't really care about anything going on until Black Lives Matter hit it, and it's like, okay, this is sad. I'm seeing a video. It's almost like this. It's like people need to see things right in their face to be like, damn, it's bad. Like I was having a debate with somebody about Twitter. It's kind of just gory, nothing but gore, and it was like Palestinian kids like being on the timeline being like killed, and I was like, I don't want to see that. That's bad imagery just put in my brain, and they were just like, well, some people need to see that because they need to know like, hey, it's going on, and when they see it, they're like, oh, it's real. And I'm like, well, those are terrible people because I know rape is bad. I don't need to see a woman. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I don't need to see that. I know a black person getting killed by a cop is bad. I don't need to see that. That's like, you know what I'm saying? That's like, I never want to see a black person get killed again by the police. That's just something I don't want to take in.
So you're saying that, let's call it the general American, black, white, and other, has lost any capacity to feel empathy for black people,
For sure, bro. Because,
and also like and Palestinians, and just anyone who isn't a white person basically, and that loss of a capacity, is to feel empathy, is just broadly, there's some large percentage of humans who just either don't have that much empathy, and then the media helps to does not help to create those empathetic relationships unless it's some depraved level of violence,
Yeah,
which then still only even works for certain people.
bro. Black people are a lot of not all black people. A lot of black people already grew up desensitized to black death because we know so many black people that done died before we hit 18. I remember looking at a 21 Savage interview on Breakfast Club. Brett named like 10 people that died and he was like 21, and it's just like, damn, bruh. Bob, like gun violence, it's like you shouldn't know that many people. G Herbo got like an album cover where he's holding up the American flag, and instead of the stars, it's 50 people he know that died to gun violence. And it's like, damn, bro, G Herbo was like 23 when he made that album. It's like, bruh shouldn't know that many people. So just by default, you know that many people that have died, you're going to be desensitized to Black Death because you done heard it so much. You done been to many funerals. You done seen dead black bodies. So I think it's just, programming and just kind of like a victim of circumstance. If you know that many people, you're going to be desensitized. And it's almost like a soldier. You know what I'm saying? They be desensitized to death sometimes because they done known so many of their buddies that done died in war. So it's just it's a messed up. We just in a messed up place. I feel like I sound pessimistic talk about it, but I don't know, man. We in a messed up
No,
place.
you don't sound. You sound like you just telling us which way the wind is blowing. Like that's what the weather report is, and I think that's important to know. And I mean, I think that you use the word desensitized, to the brutality uh, of being black in America, but also just you know in the context of what's happening right now, being Palestinian, being black in DRC, being Haitian, like all these theaters of colonial, genocidal, capitalist, white supremacist violence, right, are brutal. Because violence is just in nature. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, you know, but you we're talking more about senseless violence, senseless and brutal, unnecessarily brutal violence, which is another register. Um, and I think that senseless, brutal violence becoming getting exposed to it, to your point, whether it's in a video or it's in your homies or whatever it is, what I what I would say is it doesn't desensitize. It does something else. It disfigures
Mm.
your conscience because you still remain aware of it. You can still feel it, but it changes your responses. And I also don't think there's even a norm. Like there's a normal way you should respond to it. There's a normal way you should respond to seeing a video of a dead body. Maybe there isn't a normal way, but there's a way that's going to preserve your consciousness and your life and your ability to be empathetic. And then there's a way that's going to protect you, let's call it. And I think that whatever that mechanism is, to be like disfigured, and it's really strange. It's not really predictable how it's going to disfigure any given person. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Any given black child who's going to make a rap album later, for sure. You know what I mean? But in my estimation, I do think that like that was MLK's genius, or the whole sort of black liberation theology genius was in a moment to use violence, to use images of violence. Black people getting hosed down, black people getting attacked by dogs against black people to prove to white America and to quote unquote conservative black America that you know empathy. You need to empathize
Mm-hmm.
with us, right? And this Jim Crow shit gotta go, et cetera, what have you. And they were right. Like in a certain way, that moved the needle, right? But it didn't move the needle alone. There also had to be some niggas with guns, you know, doing some maroon shit to be like, yeah, fuck that non-violent shit. You know what I'm saying? And then it had to be everything in between. So it wasn't just in order for the political consciousness of, for the Civil Rights Act to be passed, let's call that the goal, or whatever it was, the Voting Rights Act to be passed, right? It wasn't just one thing, but I think that the part of the thinking that was like, let's use media and images of violence and brutality against black people in order to shift consciousness towards some amount of empathy where none existed, happened. I would say that just like we're talking about with the virus, that the system of human consciousness, communal consciousness around empathy has learned how to inoculate and like against the image as like a thing that will craft empathy, and also against empathy is actually effective in a quote unquote political sphere
Yeah.
where laws got to get passed, or police got to get defunded, or Lockheed Martin got to stop making the planes or the bomb. Like, the real shit got to stop happening for people not to be getting their heads chopped off. Like, real shit got to stop happening. So empathy, I don't think is in the equation anymore, even though it was part of the solution in one moment, which means it's seductive as a goal. Like, let's get all these motherfuckers who ran up on us not on us, on the government on January 6th to care if a Palestinian kid is beheaded, or to care if a black child is shot.
Real quick, real
Man,
quick,
that's
real
not
quick,
going to happen.
real quick, bro. I want to comment on that. I always said them niggas are dumb for doing that, but I was like, bro. I mean, realistically, if they did that for like something like good, that'd be kind of gangster. You know what I'm saying? What if they did that for like some like a black kid that died by the arms of the state? And it's like, man, we
They would
stormed it.
all be dead. They'd all be dead.
You are
Every single one of them would be dead.
you are 100%.
They would have taken out the Gatling gun on every single one of them.
You are a hundred
The
percent
reason
right.
they are alive, and that the theater that you saw happen, it's because of what they were running up on the
Yeah.
place for. Because in your concept, in the theater of it, they ran up on it against some sort of resistance, but that's not true. The guards opened the gates for them, so that
Yeah.
means they didn't run up on anything. That's the whole. You know what I mean? Like, the theater that we even think happened did not happen. All that happened was, like, somebody walked up to their brother. One was dressed in a Trump ridiculous outfit. Another was dressed as a police
Yeah.
officer, and they shook hands, and one of them let the other one in. And they ceremonially killed 4 or 5 of them and said, like, guys, you're going too far. That's all that happened. Right? And arrested a few more, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can't take out the ideology of a white supremacist, violent, genocidal consciousness, and how that, you know, protects
Yeah, for
people
sure.
physically, psychologically, spiritually. That's their armor.
I have a. You're a smart brother, man. I have an idea, question that I want to present to you because you brought up something about like um, Martin Luther King and just like people from that time, that civil rights area. I think one glaring difference, and I'm just curious what you think about this, is that one thing that's for stayed the same is that black people are still dying from getting killed by police officers and just, like you said, state killings, state sponsored killings. I feel like back then there seemed to be a lot of people who also, Black Panthers, for example, they see somebody getting arrested by the police, they coming up with the rifle, making sure ain't nothing happening. Same day, they're going to the hood to like squash beefs, like get gangs to like unite and stuff like that. I feel like in today's society, we've almost like forgotten about like the hood nigga, if you want to say. It's almost like we've got less empathy for them and turned them into just like fetishes or minstrel shows. It's like niggas don't even look at them as humans. It's like, oh, this nigga finna make a song about killing his ops. I want to bump that. It's like, hey, bro, that nigga is like, this nigga's like 24 years old, hurting, bro, off pills. Like, we need to help this man. You know what I'm saying? Rather if he's the rapper or just a regular hood nigga. And I feel like a lot of times that's where I got the desensitized thing from, because it's like, damn, we listening to niggas not talking about just like, oh, I kill a nigga, I kill a nigga. It's like, oh, they're naming actual dead people, and it's like, this is like, it's like they're going through stuff, and it's like, I feel like we should be feeling for them and trying to help them versus listening to it and almost turn it into a minstrel show. And like I said, you had the Black Panthers helping them out. You had, I know a lot of people feel different ways about the Nation of Islam. They helped a lot of hood niggas out. So I'm just curious if you think there has been like a shift in perspective in the way that we like look at them and being like, hey, we need to help these dudes out, versus now it's kind of being like fetishized to being like a hood nigga.
Who do you mean by we?
Uh, this I'm talking about black people. This is specifically black people. I'm
Do you
talking.
mean black people of a certain class, like middle class black people?
I'm yeah, not lower income black people, middle class black people. Yes, that's definitely what I'm talking about.
So the question being, like, do middle class black people now um, essentially process poor black people Black people in prison as somewhere between entertainment and just, the wretched of the earth. You
Ex-
know, you know,
like for
actually.
example, boom. It's a dude on YouTube named Trapler Ross who makes like 2 hour long documentaries about like niggas in the hood kill each other. And I know a lot of middle class black people that watch those videos. And this dude's like
Mhm.
from like the UK, and it's like we're watching some UK white man break down niggas killing each other in Chicago. Like this is insane. So yes, that's what I mean. Just kind of looking at it more as like entertainment, a circus type of thing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm
Yeah,
getting at.
thank you for that example because I did not know that exists,
Yes,
and
it does.
that changed my day. Unfortunately,
Bro, and I'm talking about bro
that
get like 4 million
exists.
views on these videos. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And you're kind of saying that you're placing that in contrast to an understanding of the Black Panther movement as something that was connected to let's call it on one level the university system, you know, and a concept of the Black intelligentsia, for instance, you know, um, and also to people in prison. Angela Davis wasn't a Panther, but to use her as an example of somebody who was within the figure in the Black Power movement is also a prominent prison abolitionist, working, and that connection existed, whereas it doesn't anymore. So if that's kind of what you're saying, I think that there's a lot to say about that. You know what I mean? I do think that the entertainment piece is maybe the most disturbing or grotesque, but also like in another frame, it's just American ultimately. You know what I mean? Like, um, in that the plight of the Black person in poverty and also under the heel of white supremacy turning to, whatever has to get turned to in terms of brutality, um, becoming profitable product, entertainment product, right? Um, I don't know enough about it to really know like when it started, but let's say hip hop culture animated a kind of way for that images and music and of that story, that those archetypes to become profitable in certain spheres.
Yeah.
You know, in music most particularly, right? Whereas in the '60s, it wasn't so much that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like Marvin Gaye wasn't selling records because he's talking about like somebody got shot or whatever like that. It wasn't like economically viable, right? But by the time you get to 50 Cent or whatever, it's like he got shot 9 times. Cool, whatever. Not bearing on the fact that 50 Cent is a great musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Melodies are what they are. You know what I mean? Like, but I think that part of it, you know what I mean? That like the theater is something that is an aspect of capitalism, you know, and in the American subconception as a place where the great crime is sort of the foundational story, you know, like the foundational story of the American is a great sort of uh, miner, the person a great colonist, a settler, and that person is always a gangster. You know what I mean? Ultimately, I think it dovetails with that. So, there's a really, for me, there's a way to observe that kind of phenomenon of how marketable and profitable, that kind of mode of blackness has become. It's just about, you know, us capitalizing on that story as a country, right? And maybe that's most of it. I don't think that says so much about the past, and that's just something that hadn't totally gestated yet for Black people, like
Mm.
to be able to do that. But I don't think that what you're saying, which is just sort of like inside Blackness, class cultural warfare, that's really like quote unquote class warfare that has a really strange, like, and kind of maybe gross consumptive quality to it. I don't think it started in this generation. I think they had it then. They definitely had it then too. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't say the middle class blacks, of Northern California or Southern California were broadly accepting of the Black Panthers.
Mm.
I think they thought of them as half country, half hood niggas who they were like, if you people don't get a job, you know what I mean? Like, because
That's interesting to
I
think
think
about. I've never thought about
because
that.
yeah, because they've survived so well as a technology and as a idea space for organizing, Black liberation, because they also have survived as just like a practice of being together and evolving liberation consciousness. We think that what they were up to was broadly accepted at the time, and it definitely was not. You know what I'm saying? But especially not by rich Negroes. You know what I mean? No. So I would say that like we just forget that ultimately. You know what I mean? That I think Robin Kelly said that even with the civil rights movement, that it was not a mass Black movement. It wasn't like the majority of Black people were like, let's go to the sit-in. You know what I mean? It was necessarily a lot of young people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Who were like, and that could be married now essentially. In the sense that like the cats that are just like during the Freddie Gray moment or whatever. I wouldn't say that the sort of centrist Black person, middle class Black person who has a picture of Obama on their mantle was out in the streets like that, talking
Yeah.
about defund the police. But their kid might have been,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "What are you talking about? You know what I mean? You need the police. Go vote. Vote. Stop being in the street with your, tearing, looting Macy's or whatever. Like whatever it was. You know what I mean? I think that is just that existed then. Maybe even more so. You know what I mean? So, but I don't think that explains the entertainment piece.
Yeah.
That you put out, which is I think something it has evolved more recently.
If there's any books or documentaries about this, somebody comment, let me know about specifically middle class Black people in the '60s and their kind of thoughts of like Malcolm X, Black Panthers, Martin Luther King, Nation of Islam. I'll be very interested in knowing what the middle, because we only hear time we hear like Black people like it's like, oh yeah, we love that. I want to know what the middle class Black people thought of those movements. That's actually something I've
Yeah,
never thought about.
you could look it up. You could look it up, but I mean, I've seen a documentary, a newsreel, and uh, it was about Black people in Southern California who were there. This feels like maybe it was in the '60s, either Inglewood, Compton, probably, and they were talking about this newer wave of Black people who were coming from Louisiana and Texas, and basically like these country niggas is fucking up the culture here because we've got it together. We're professionals. And it was like talking down to them. And it was that kind of classic colonial problem of like
Yeah.
you know certain population of the quote unquote natives are always going to start to get into this Stockholm syndrome, over identify with the oppressor, right? So like they're doing that. It was like something, like you're literally watching the video, like that's still somebody's grandparent right now. Like that person's alive. You know what I'm saying? And then you like, oh, that's kind of how my granddad is.
Yeah.
You don't have to actually go to the archive. You can just go ask your granddad, like, what did you think about us being in the streets? And be like, y'all need to take care of something. Like whatever it is. And maybe it's fine. It feels benign because it maybe is, and it's actually not. It's not personal. You know what I'm saying? Like these are things that happen to us when we're disfigured by being colonized.
Yeah.
So it's just it's everywhere. People could talk to people in their family and figure out where their head is at as it relates to how being adopting oneself and seeing oneself as a middle class, or like Sylvia Witcher says, Homo economicus.
Yeah.
How it disfigures your ability to see people who are fugitive or refusing that are human.
Mm.
You know, and that's a problem.
And you talk about them coming from the south, over there to Inglewood. You're from Texas, right?
I am from Texas. A lot of my family's in California though, because of that situation.
So that situation. What do you think when people say Texas is not the South?
I
You,
haven't really heard that. People
I've
say
I've been
that.
hearing that for the past like 5 years. Like somebody was talking about something, and I was like, oh, that's in Texas. He was like, well, that's not the South. I was like, well, what is it? And I've heard multiple people tell me that, and I don't know. You said you never heard it, but I've heard that a couple times. I didn't know if you heard that.
Maybe, but maybe what the people are talking about a little bit is that there's a Texas is 800 miles wide. You know what I'm saying? So like, if you are in Corsicana or Tyler or somewhere in East Texas, it's not going to be the same culturally at all as by the time you get to El Paso. It's a whole other situation. You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of history that explains why
Yeah,
the cultural transition. But so maybe the South, as we conceive it as a Black cultural space, is most concentrated in Northeast Texas, you know, but then at the farther west you get, slowly another cultural situation takes over. That's more like New Mexico, and like I don't. Maybe that's what they're saying, but
yeah.
obviously, what I'm saying. Like Dallas is the South. You know what I'm saying? Like
It feels like it
nobody's
to
been to
me.
Dallas to be like, this is not the South. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It feels like it to
yeah,
me. And I know growing up there, I heard you talk about being like an athlete, and you play football, right? What position you played?
free safety.
Free safety. How tall are you?
6'1".
6'1". That's crazy. I had no clue until listening to that interview. I was like, this nigga. The way you was talking, I was like, this nigga's like an elite athlete. Like this nigga was just intercepting, maulsing niggas, taking it back to the crib. You feel me, yo niggas, man? Were you like? Would you say you were really good?
I wasn't that good.
Okay, okay. I was about to say, were
I
you?
was all right. I was all right. I mean, I played in college, but I was all right. I was the captain. I was all right. I was not anything to write home about in that sense. I was on my way to another thing, obviously.
Are you? Would you say you're still in good shape right now?
No, not related to that. I mean, that was a whole other level.
Like, could you play a game of basketball and not be tired?
Yes.
Got you, got you, got you. Hey, also wanted to shout out to you because watching season 1 and season 2, I seen you got in some pretty good shape.
Oh yeah.
I peeped. I peeped that.
That's true. I definitely season 1. I was not in great shape. I was like, I need to get my life together to
Hey,
get in
I'm
better shape.
I'm
But
you in season 1 right now. I gotta, you feel me? I need to be season 2 next year. You feel me? I'm
yeah,
trying to
you
be season
listen.
2 next year. And it's funny because there's so much. Like I said, this we've talked about so many things, and it's so many things I want to get to that we'll probably get to another day. But one thing that I found interesting, I think this might have been season 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. Might have been season 1. I think it's actually in the season 1. It was where you were talking about, I guess, like the trope of like maybe like white heroes, and you're talking about like Breaking Bad and all that. So before I say what I'm about to say, are you a fan of any of those shows or movies that you talked about in that piece?
Um, in the sense that I think that they're good cinema in the with some of them, within the logics that they're within their goals, their creative goals. I think that they're successful and enjoyable to watch as drama. But I still think that like my analysis is about what their use is for Empire, which makes it difficult for me to be a fan. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm,
can learn. I'll be like, this is designed to cast, you know, the colonizers of the white man within a certain type of favor, karmically, energetically, spiritually, and I can see that that has a history that's expressing itself as necessary to the project of empire and the project of colonization. That this figure has to exist and be viable and be morally redeemable. You know.
no, and like after watching that, I'm not gonna lie, you had me looking at all them shows and movies with I'm like, hold on now, I'm looking at it with a different eye now. You know, feel me? But the movie that
Yeah.
the film that I wanted to bring up that shocked me, I don't even know if you remember what all you put in there, but before I even say, do you remember what you put in there? Like, there was one where I was like, this feels out of place. Not that it was wrong, but just like, I'm like, this is just such a random movie to put in here. It's a movie that I actually really like, but just didn't expect it to, you put that in there. Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
Yeah, I mean, I remember all the movies I put in there. But do you mean Fight Club?
No, not Fight Club, because that's a really popular. It was a movie that's not as popular at all than the other
Oh, okay.
movies. The House that Jack built.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
that that threw me off. I was like, what? I didn't expect it to be
Well,
here.
the House of Jack Bill is a stretch, to be honest with you,
Mm,
um, because it's not American, and he isn't American. And he's not in the normal mode of quote unquote romanticizing what that character is. But I do think it still furthers the project because it makes him a viable center of a cinematic expression,
yeah,
even if you try and make that ugly. You know what I mean? And so I wouldn't, I don't mean this is explicitly kind of to indict any of the given artists who made them, but Lars von Trier is like explicitly interested in, the extent to which certain type of really violent, masculine, dominant energy can disfigure you. Like he's interested in that obviously throughout all his work. That might be the most intense one where he's trying to figure that out,
yeah.
And I think that has, you just talk about the use of a movie that probably has divinatory use for him. You know what I mean? And I think it's also colored in a certain way by just like what the specific history of Denmark is and his own relationships to that place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of times he plays with America. You know what I mean? Like he plays with a more, like the cultural field that could be said to be quote unquote American or broadly more Western cultural. So because of that play, I think it makes it, open to this particular critique because he's playing over here in a way. You know what I mean?
It's kind of a vague question, but you talk about you can't be fans of certain movies because of, just kind of how you view them overarchingly. What does Terrence Nance like? Like, what are you a fan of when it comes to like film and movies? Like, what are things that you maybe even recent things that you're like, this is like really amazing and they're stuck with you? Like, what are things that are not your work that you really do appreciate when it comes to film?
Man, a lot. You know what I mean? Like, um, I love all kinds of stuff. I hate it when people ask me that question though, because I always feel like I see a lot of stuff like this is amazing, and then in the moment of having to recall it, I can never remember it. So
Same.
it makes
I'm
me
the
look
same.
like I'm.
I'm the same.
But yeah, I think there's so much amazing stuff out there in the movie and TV space. Yeah, Raven Jackson put out a film. I think it's called All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt. It was really amazing. It felt like really in the register of a kind of Tarkovsky film, but it was set, I think in Mississippi,
Mm.
where she's from. And yeah, it's just it's a type of movie you can fall asleep to in the best way. Like it's working on your consciousness.
Yeah.
And that came to mind. There's other ones. I like all the stuff that's great. You know what I mean? There's a lot of great stuff. Like generally, I'm not like a hard ass about. You know what I mean? If something works, it works. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Um, yeah.
Well, when we're off here, nigga, send me some stuff because I just want to. I feel like I just
Yeah,
want to
I'm
get.
gonna send you.
Yeah, I need to get inside your brain. Last thing before, because I do want to get into your music, but last thing about the show, because like I said, there's so much to talk about the show. There's no way I can get into everything. It's the one thing that I have to bring up because it tickled my fancy because it's just one of my interests that I'm into. I bust out laughing when I seen Mark Henry on there. That just threw me off. I was Why is Mark Henry saying nigga so much? I've never heard this. This is insane. And I needed to know, why was Mark Henry the person you chose to be, in that role? That was so great.
Shout out to Mark. He's just amazing, really game former actor. Just love his energy and you know everything he's up to. And Jamin Washington, shout out to him. He's worked with Mark before. He's one of the producers and writers on Random Acts. And I don't think I was aware of Mark because I don't watch wrestling, so I was like I had to get caught up when he told me about him and just like generally you know who he was, what he was about. But instantly I was like, he's the perfect person to auction off the right to say nigga to Quentin Tarantino, who clearly would buy it. And it was just obviously he was the one. There was no once it was like, oh, it should be him. It was like, oh, definitely. There's nobody else. You know what I mean? There's no other. You know what I mean? Like it was that simple. You know what I mean? So thank God he said yes.
No, that was super duper good. And fast forward, 2022, I think, or 2020, I think it's 2022. I say he's dropping an album. I was like, what doesn't this nigga do? This nigga make music too? I didn't even know this. So I'm like, what is this going to? I had no idea what Vortex was going to sound like. I listened to it, and I'm like, you are just amazing. You make music. Nelson makes music. I do my research. I know your brother Dre Nance sound like an angel. You feel that brother boy can sing, boy. I done heard him. I done seen him. That boy can sing. You feel me? Dre Nance singing like he need to be on somebody. You feel me? Choir, man, the choir leader. So he's great. And it's like all of y'all are amazing. And the interesting thing about you, and I know Nelson does it too. Nelson, I don't know. I feel like I done heard a Nelson Mandela. Like I feel like I done heard him dabble in like four genres. Like he go crazy. The Black James Blake. You know what I'm saying? Salute to my guy.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
too though, cause this songs on here that sound like a traditional R&B song. But then you damn near dabble in like a folk era type of song or whatever, and then you kind of flirt with rapping a little bit. It's just like you did like five genres on here. But the craziest part about it, it all sounded cohesive. A lot of times you could do that and it just sounded like this is all over the place. It sounded like everything tied together perfectly. So with that, that is a damn good album, my boy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a lot of work to put it together, and I'm just glad everybody listens and can see that. You know what I mean? That it was a puzzle. It had to be assembled.
It was. I mean, it's a puzzle is a perfect place because you could be a one piece of the puzzle and it's like okay, but then you got another piece of the puzzle. Like, okay, this definitely don't go together. But when it's all together, you're like, God damn! But this really came together how it was supposed to. Like, there's one part where you sound like I don't even know what genre this would be, but there's like a couple artists I listen to from Ireland, and they make music like that. And what it's like, I would tell you what song it was that reminded me of that. Give me 1 second. Oh, it's towards the latter of the album. It's like a moment of disguise. It's like our Merchant of Flatbush. Like I don't know if you know who Hosier is. He's like a pretty popular person. It's like people over there. They make that type of music, and I'm just like, at first he sounded like this. Not this nigga sounded like he from Ireland. The first nigga from, you know what I'm saying? First nigga from Texas right here. Not this nigga from Ireland. This nigga is insane. It's crazy, dog. Like you were super duper versatile, and I didn't even put this together. It goes to the show. Random acts of flyness where this skit may be about kids dying, everybody finna die. And like I said, the next, the broccoli taking HGH up his booty. You know what I'm saying? It's like but it all come together at the end, and it's man, chef's kiss, man. You're that dude. You feel me? You that dude, man. I just had to say that. I've kept you for too long. Sometime in the future, we gotta do this again because there's so much we didn't talk about. But before we do get out of here, if there's any last words you want to say to the people, let it be known, man.
Not just gratitude, man. Thank you for you doing what you do, doing all the research you put in. You know what I mean, and committing to your own practice, your own medicine. You know what I mean, like and just being consistent because you know it's really beautiful to be able to like share and amplify the stuff that you connect with. You know what I mean? So I'm just appreciative of you. Yeah, I'm gonna keep. The one thing I thought about since you said it, it's a great movie. Is Shakedown from my
Okay.
friend Charles. So shout out to her.
I'm re-
That movie.
what's her name? Say it again.
Leela Weintraub. You should interview Leela. Definitely.
You gotta put me in. Yeah, I'm not hip to her. If you give her the
Yeah.
cosign, I'm already intrigued. You feel me? So I just wrote it down. We'll talk about that later. And I'm tripping. I do have two people I do want to ask you about because I know you worked with one and you follow the other. Uh, Earl, I do want to know how you came about Earl, and I know you helped direct some stuff for him. You follow the coolest. I love her, man. She like the coolest rapper of all time, man. I love this lady. No Name. I don't know if you've ever met or talked with her, but I would love to see you and No Name do something because I love No Name. She's the
Got
best,
it.
man.
Yeah. You gotta do something for sure. For sure. No Name is amazing, you know. Like I haven't stopped. I mean, that last album too. I mean, I'm still
Crazy,
in. You know what I'm saying? Like
crazy.
and that's so rare nowadays that like, you know, um, something continues to capture your imagination so much time. But yeah, and Earl I met. Wow, you know, when we did that, yeah, he just reached out, and it was just a really beautiful moment because that album, you know, so much was going on. Ryan's father and just processing that grief, and you know, it was just he's just such a an amazing writer,
Yeah,
and yeah, it was just really amazing to work with him on that to express that, you know. So yeah, love both of those artists. You know, I'm just lucky to have met them at all, or just you know just hear their work and see what they you know. Hopefully, both of them make some movies too, because I would love to see that. You know,
yeah, for sure. And I guess last recommendation for me, who I want to see you work with. You know what I'm saying? I know creative differences on Space Jam. We didn't even talk about that, but I heard you talk about that in an interview, and that was interesting to me. Um, you know what athlete I would love to see you do something with? I'd love to see you do something with Kyrie Irving. Just because Kyrie Irving is
let's
a
do it.
interesting fella.
Call. He's an interesting dude.
You know?
Yeah, call me Kyrie. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. This is me trying to throw the alley oop for him to somehow see this and be like, you know what? I actually do want to work with Taylor's dad. So if you're interested, hey man, I would love for you to do something with
I'm
Kyrie.
100% down.
For sure, for
100%
sure.
down.
Well, shoot, for everybody watching right now, I appreciate you guys. Until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters are gonna hate, and players are gonna play. You guys holler at your boy.